Okay, I'd like to call Clayton and 6 panellists, please, up to the stage. So we've got Geri Hayden, Bianca McNeair, Daniel Rowe, Bruce Smith, and Dr Noel Nannup. And I'll pass it over to Clayton for more formal introductions.
Thank you, JJ. G'day everybody, my name's Clayton Lewis. I'd like to acknowledge Whadjuk people where we are today. It's good to come back to my hometown and see a lot of people. Certainly had a bit of a livelier afternoon than the morning, so we save the best for last, I think. We've got a panel consisting of people from across WA. We do have a series of questions that we'd like to pose to them, and we would like to hear what each of these people have to say, providing how we're going for time. We may open it to the floor, but we certainly want to hear from these people. And I think all of our panellists have been made aware of that today, so that we can hear the concerns from everybody. Okay, I'm just bringing up, I think JJ alluded to our people. I'll just expand on who we have. I should say that I'm from Morrill in the Midwest. I live in Widi country, southeast of Geraldton, Dongra. That's my dad's side. And my mother's a Nanda woman, born in Wuniwai, Northampton. So from there up to Shark Bay. I feel pretty good about that. But look, we'll go to our panel, and I'll just introduce everybody. Down the far end, we have Geri Hayden. Geri's a Noongar and Bibbulmun yorga, living in Perth. Also sits on the Nala Kala Budja working group, and is an Aboriginal Arts and Culture Coordinator at Community Arts Network.
Aboriginal Cultural Advisor.
Oh, okay. Look, there we go. I've got the wrong information. We're right on the start. Well, Geri, I'll get you to introduce yourself in a moment. I'll just try and run down this way. Next to Geri, I hope I've got this right, Bianca McNeair. Bianca, a Malgana woman from Gatharguda, Shark Bay. Also chairperson for the Malgana Aboriginal Corporation. Passionate about Indigenous languages, art, culture, and is also involved in environmental NRM projects in the region, and with a strong emphasis on that lovely part of the world. So welcome to you, Bianca. Moving down the line, a chap that I've known for a long time, Dr Noel Nannup. Noel is a respected Noongar elder, lives in Perth, also a storyteller, cultural guide, instructor and mentor, and has been a heritage consultant with Indigenous Tours WA, and also elder in residence at Edith Cowan University. Noel's worked to promote public awareness on the importance of caring for the environment, and also played an active and leading role in reconciliation. On my left here, Mr. Bruce Smith, a cultural man based in Laverton in the Goldfields region. Former chairman of the Nunga Council and the ATSIC Western Desert Regional Council, and currently sits on the ACMC, the Aboriginal Cultural Materials Committee. So welcome to you, Bruce. And Mr. Rowe, Daniel Rowe, Goolarabooloo man from the Broome region, in the West Kimberley, acting general manager of the Goolarabooloo Millibinyari, there we go, Indigenous Corporation, and also works as a heritage tourism operator. So welcome to everybody. Thank you for your time. As I said, we've got a few questions. I've got 8, and it's taken 6 months to get those 8 questions down, but the way today is unfolded a bit, I think that I've got a little bit of leeway in probably steering this conversation. We do get bogged down, we'll go back to those guiding questions. So I might start with Geri at the end, and Geri, you can correct me with with where you're about and who you are. And Geri, I think the question we'll pose to everybody first up is, how have you found today? What do you think of what could have been done better, or what you liked?
How do I use this? So this one's for the Zoom and that one's for the room. So if you just keep this one near you as well, that'll be fantastic.
Technology, yeah. What I like about today.
What do you like about today? What do you think you could have done better?
Actually, everything that I've actually seen from this morning has been quite an experience. But the one that's blown me away is the last lot of speakers there about the Junkan Gorge. I think it's a disgrace and to the Aboriginal race, actually. And I wanted to ask a question, but we ran out of time. But while I'm up here, I'll ask. So I really wanted to know if that group of miners, wherever they are, the businesses, were actually what do you call it? Fined. I think the department has a law, or the act, to actually fine people who desecrate, companies who desecrate Aboriginal sites. Do they actually carry them out? And you know, is it a joke? Because where I'm sitting and what I've been hearing, I think it's a joke, you know, to be able to desecrate our heritage and get away with it. You know, we had one recently in Perth where they want to do the railway lines. You know, one of our ponds, our water holes, desecrated. And because of that cultural committee, you know, who know nothing. And we go back to our Aboriginal people who know, who've got the knowledge to be able to speak for country, on country, and be those speakers, be those spokespersons for your community, for your families, for your people, to be able to identify and be recognised.
Thank you, Geri. Bianca, would you like to add to that?
I think I really enjoyed seeing the platform that traditional owners are being given today and the respect that's been paid, especially to the Whadjuk people on country here, and also to all the traditional owners that have been able to present. And also appreciate the support that traditional owners are getting from archaeology people and anthropologists and everyone else working in the heritage work. You know, I know there's a lot of yous in the background. I'm working in admin myself. It takes a lot of work to get these sort of things done. So I think just on that positive note, I've appreciated that and like to see that going forward, and seeing more of the things that came up about Aboriginal people receiving PhDs and acknowledging culture as science. That's it for me.
Thank you, Bianca. We might just bring it down the line, Noel. You want to add to that? No, I'm talking to you, mate.
About the day?
About today, or what you've seen?
Yeah,
or...
okay. Well, I'm at a distinct disadvantage because I couldn't afford the time to get here and listen to what was being talked about today. But one of the things I am is committed to our cultural heritage, and it goes back to '89 for me when I went across the country and studied at a university in Canberra, and I studied cultural heritage management, and it seems so long ago. However, since then, the only real opportunity I've had to put some of those skills in train is actually when I got back here and caught up with your good self there, Clayton, and also Stephen, and we started to look at how we might keep the bastards honest, if you like. Sorry, Robin, I'm using that thing. Oh, okay. And your help was much appreciated as well in the way we got rid of what we needed to get rid of and brought in the new lot. And I think since then there's been a positive way forward. If you're not sure, We're talking about the old DAA, when that was just a puppet and nothing more. And then, of course, the ACMC, which was stacked to the rafters with those that they wanted in there. And we stood out the front there and did something I very rarely do, and that's stand on the soapbox and use the megaphone and yell at people and shout at people and get change, and we got change. And since then, there's been dragging the chain all the way to here. So I've been keeping an eye on it, and I'm sure you would have talked about lots of positive things, but I looked in the book and I saw keeping places. Please, we were talking about that in 89, 90, and they're still being talked about. What the hell is wrong with us? We need to unite, and we need to focus on where we want to go, and we just have to stamp our feet and say this is what we want, and this is where we want it, and this is what we're going to do. And that's it, because there's one thing that's going to help us, and that's our spirituality. And we must never ever underestimate the power of that spirituality, because it is there waiting all the time, and all we have to do is access it, and away we go. It might sound simplistic and easy, but at the same time, it is something that we must do. And I hope that's been considered in the discussions thus far. Next.
Thank you, Noel. Just before we hear from Daniel, I just wanted to add that myself and Noel, Steve Bennett, and other lady by the name of Elizabeth Vaughan, back in 2015, we formed the Aboriginal Action Heritage Alliance, likely known as AHA. And anyway, we did a bit of work, and we've certainly come a long way since then. And in recent years, we've seen events in the Kimberley, and unfortunately, also with some of the speakers today. And due to the sadness, I think there were some emotional accounts of what happened today, and I think that probably everybody in the room feeling a bit about, feeling a bit sad about some of those things, and it's the eternal battle for First Nations people, wherever we are, from Esperance to Untitled or wherever, or points in between. But certainly from my point of view, very heartening to see lots more people and a bit more media coverage, and yeah, we just keep in there and keep going. So I'll hand over to Daniel now, and what do you find out? What do you think about today? How do you find today?
Yeah. Well, firstly, yeah, just thanks. I'd like to acknowledge here the Whadjuk Ballardong Nation here and welcome me, and I'm very privileged to be here, to be up on this panel also. I guess today has been very interesting. There's been, we identified there's processes, a legal process, administrative processes. We all have to follow, we all comply, we're all part of it, but then in different circumstances throughout the state, it's unique. And that's how I think it needs to be dealt with on approach in a way that, with the land or the proposals that impacts on heritage have, detrimental outcomes. Whether the act, I always thought about it, just sitting in the back and just trying to absorb the information about the Heritage Act, and whether it's, we talk about the act as protecting a site, but is it protecting a site or is it protecting the best interests of the state? So there's two things. And the issues, and prior to native title, there were processes in place. Land management dealt with, but there were processes in different areas before native title. There's a lot of dissidence, hearing conversation of people's feelings. That's everywhere for us. That's our life, I suppose, that we have to, strive and struggle with in resolving these issues. I was talking to my young brother earlier outside there, and then we talk about these PVCs and the processes there. There's law here we've got to look at now. But I just, just jokingly said, well, there was a PVC, back in the day. There was people before colonization. I mean, I can elaborate more on other things, but today was very interesting. But I think it's just we're having to look forward and way to resolve, you know, as a unified group here, professionals, you know, people, TOs, and government, in making a mechanism that's achievable, workable. And all these issues and submissions that are submitted on this proposal, hopefully the government is going to, you know, come through with the goods, enabling every individual. There was talk about UNDRIP, free prior informed consent. That's something that I think that every individual, Aboriginal individual, has a right to be heard and consulted, which there are, you know, around the state and around the country of Australia. We're all faced and come across these sort of issues. But yeah, saying that, I think today was very fruitful. But like, yeah, thank you for that, and yeah, I'll pass on to Mr. Bruce now.
Thanks, Daniel. We might go to Mr. Smith. Bruce, how did you find today?
I think instead of looking around and listening to a whole lot of discussions coming, I come from a background, I'm a cultural person. I grew up in the nomad area. They ask me, where you grew up? I always say I grew up in the Free State. They say, heck, how's that? Well, my family was a nomad gypsy tribe. We went from one rock hole to another rock hole. So my growing up was only in the bush back in those days. But listening to, I guess, listening to the frustration and the hurts and all those things, we all were sort of a common in those areas. I come from the Nanda area, in living in the Goldfields. I'm a very cultural man. I practice law. I participate in law and business. In the ritualness of my law, in the dreamings, I always tell people, you know, Captain Cook might have conquered the people and the land, but it did not conquer my law. My law still exists today. And that law is linked right across, whether you're in the Pilbara, whether you're in the Noongar country, whether you're in the Whadjuk country or the top end of Australia. We have the dreaming tracks that covers all that. And in those dreaming tracks and the mythological tracks, there are pockets of sensitiveness, there are stories there. So the stories there are the basic stories as well as sensitive stories. We learned that, and Aboriginal people who learn about those, when we're born into inheritance that belongs to us, and the land is part of us. But there's another law that came to us, and it took away or imposed a new law. And we talked about land. People in the Northern Territory, South Australia, they secured their land rights. People in WA, we secured native title. It's still a land, but we forgot about to talk about our own law, Gatharguda law that builds the country. And those laws that we're trying to protect, we can't protect because of there's a legislation that doesn't, that's not looking eye to eye us. And that's why, sometimes it disadvantages us and it doesn't recognize us to say, hey, come to the middle ground. Let's talk about how we're going to move forward, how we're going to learn with one another. This is a special place. This is a special place. And unfortunately, a lot of the country is this one here say there's an interest. What is the interest? There is a mining interest, there's a government interest, but there's also an interest that is not, they're not listening to it because they're forgetting about us. And I've been in the ACMC for a couple of years now. And I come in there thinking that I have the knowledge of the brain because I was a cultural man and I knew the stories of the dreaming to try and give something and try and protect something. The only thing, I couldn't try something, but I couldn't try and stop that because to stop that, you have to give the right story from your community, from your group, from your native tribe. You have to put that good story, identify those sites. Because when you give that stories, those are the stories that we look at the recommendation. And when we look at the recommendation, those are the stories we place our recommendation towards to give, to give recommendation to the minister. It's not my story. It's not my influences of my story to damage your culture or your country or something. It is you that you work with, your anthropologists and your archaeologists. You are the ones that are giving that story. You are really responsible for what happens at your country because you're leading it, you're taking it, your group, your native title, your people are doing that one. We only look at the report that through the anthropologists, the archaeologists, the geographical, whatever it is, and we make that decision based on your story. Yes, we don't go after you, we don't come and talk to you and tell you, and we're here. Can you tell us what you need? That doesn't allow us to come in. We got people in those regions that's representing you to represent your voice. And unfortunately, there's only one of us. There's not many of us. Maybe this new arrangement will give us a lot of us. But at the end of the day, you've got to get it right at your community, at your level, before it can be looked at and made recommendation so that it can go to the minister to make the right recommendation and say if there's a site or not a site. I'm glad you've got one of the CMC members here. If you want to go at me, that's good. But I'm a cultural person. I know my dreaming. I put it to bed in law. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. I'll just add one tip of worth on what I thought today was about. Look, I haven't come from a bit of an activist background. Raise a few feathers, I suppose, but things like heritage professionals going from land councils across to the resource sector. In the bad old days, the ACMC and DAA comprising of ex-public servant resource sector people. Some of the ethics involved in the whole mishmash of it all. Today we've looked at, certainly in the morning's proceedings, some of the technical aspects of anthropology and archaeology. And but there are these sort of shady bits and pieces that happen, and it's probably the elephant in the room. And I've been around it for a long time, and it's forever present. I think the impacts and influence of the resource sector impacts everywhere in Western Australia. The state of excitement. I think it's probably more known as the state of extraction, but I better get off my little soapbox now, and I'll take it back down this other way. I see that there was a bit of a strand coming through regarding not so much the maintenance of damage to sites, and that seems to be like a bit of a theme coming through. Whereas I asked a question before about, where is the promotion and nourishment of Aboriginal culture from the south to the coast to the desert to the north, and it just seems to be lacking a little bit, I think, in this new draft legislation. Maybe Bianca, did you want to comment on that? Do you think it's a case of how damage is managed rather than promoting and maintaining and retaining Aboriginal culture?
I think, firstly, sorry, Clayton, I just have to correct you there about Malgana woman from Gatharguda. Sorry, wrong pronunciation there, and I get in trouble for that if I say it wrong, so I have to correct you there. Traditional owners of Shark Bay. I think I see a lot of focus on, you know, where the decisions are going to be made, at what level, who's deciding this and who's deciding that. It's good to see that there is a local level being implemented, but all of these discussions, all of these issues will never really be resolved until we have a voice in Parliament, until we are that last voice on that top tier. And in that sense, that's where I think our culture and the real true value of Aboriginal culture and caring for country will be acknowledged. Because we need it to come from the top down. It already does come from the ground up. We're here. This country wouldn't be where it is today without Aboriginal people caring for it. So I think that's probably something that we need to look at. And yeah, how do we respect spiritual connection to country? How do we show you something tangible that you can write down when there maybe isn't something tangible? And sometimes it's just a space that we need to look after. And when things are damaged, what spaces are provided for us to workshop and work on our cultural activities to heal those places? And I think the support for that is already happening. You know, the actual need for that, is already happening. And some people call them disturbed sites. That to me is an issue. Almost everything's disturbed, and whether it's being disturbed by white men or you know, Aboriginal people like to change and work with sites as well. So I think the notions around Aboriginal connection to sites really needs to be widened so that it can include a lot more of the cultural practices that we as Aboriginal people really, really value.
Thanks, Bianca. We might go to Geri down the end there while the microphone's down there. Did you want to add anything to what we're talking about? Raise a concern?
Well, sorry, Dale, what's your name?
Yeah.
Bianca. Bianca, yeah, I guess you've actually said it all, but what we actually need to do is actually bring our young people along. We don't want our young people actually standing up. Frustrating, you know, when you go on these surveys, you speak to government, and you try to get across a point. Hey, we're here, you know, we do exist, and we have for hundreds of years. So, you know, and we bring with us our culture and our heritage, our sites of significance that when we look out around a place, I mean, Perth itself, coming from down the south, going all the way up there, I actually looked at a map, and the sites, I saw all these little black dots all over, from Busselton, Augusta, Busselton, all the way up to just below Geraldton, circulating all over the coast. There's so many Aboriginal sites that have been desecrated, that have been ploughed over, that have been built upon, and nothing said. We, as this generation of people, speak about. We go out there and we speak about, we tell other Whadjuk people that we actually sit down with, who want to know our culture, who want to know our language, who want to learn, you know, because they know nothing about being us, who we are, you know. It's really a sad world we live in today, but we got to keep on going. We got to keep pushing it, because I tell you what, our young people are going to have a bloody hard time trying to convince government that they do have a ancestry. Okay, we might have a white ancestry up there, but we are proud of that. But we do have a black history, and our black history has to be told. And government have to wake up, and I, you know, I'm waiting for Mr. what is his name, Ben White, to actually grace us with his presence.
Thanks, Geri. We might just be conscious of time. We've got about 15 minutes. Noel, would you want to add to that? And we go down the line here, give these other men a bit of say. Noel, would you want to say something? Give you put your 2 bobs worth in, mate?
Yeah, I just want to express my frustration and anger with everything that's happening as well. But I don't think there's much I can add to the debate right here and now in relation to on country, because a lot of our sites have been destroyed, and even though we have links to other pieces of country through the song lines, and that's one of the things I've been devoting a bit of time to, is reconnecting and establishing song lines and that connection to country that we all have, and trying to establish a better understanding and the cross-border relationships with those who know their area and those of us who know our area here, just to strengthen that bond and keep it travelling across country. So I'll just hand it on to Daniel.
Thanks, Noel. Yeah, I mean, with protecting sites, I think one of the guest speakers earlier, you know, brought up a software package that they use now to record information, and it's a valuable tool. And we must all remember, information can be a dangerous thing too. You know, and there's things for people that should, you know, that are open to public and not open to public. It's got to be respected as well, and the way it's treated or handled. I suppose too, to add on to that, is the knowledge holders' information should be, you know, respected in that sense with intellectual property rights, and it should flow on to the descendants of that informant. As you know, today myself, you know, with my great grandfather up in the Broome area, got a lot of sites registered there, and you know, we've been maintaining our sites, and we're an independent organisation, you know, registered through ORIC, just a simple Aboriginal organisation. But our purpose is we're not funded through any government body. We're very solely reliant on grants, and through our venture that we operate as the Goolarabooloo Heritage Trail. We've been operating over 32 years for a 9-day walk up the coast. That helps provide, fund and manage our corporation, as well as on-ground maintenance of looking after our sites. And the other funding that we apply is through grants. We currently have a state grant that we have been provided with, and we've spent some, you know, half of it, and then we've been told the other half, because of the decision of native title, our funds have been frozen until further notice. But we've provided advice to seek permission to access now. And I think that, you know, since the 1930s, my great-grandfather's been looking after that country. The government been coming to him. And now that having to go and seek permission to go and protect my sites. But I shouldn't have to. You know, that ever since that native title come through, it's just been a big hindrance for us all, and the frustrations that come with it. Because we've got a federal law and a state law, but both has to work together and sit side by side. But I think everyone needs to sort of unify, you know, harmonize this, you know, collectively in a way that a mechanism that can work both for PVCs, native title holders, Aboriginal groups, individuals, you know, the professional archaeologists, anthropologists, you know, and the desecration of sites, you know, where the Aboriginal Heritage Act should be there to protect it rather than to destroy it. Desecration, you know, that leads to cultural genocide. You know, I don't like that word. Assimilation, you know, these are words that I don't like to mention, but we shouldn't have to say these words. But it's something that we as people need to really protect and maintain what is important to the identity of Aboriginal Australia for the future generations, and as a reconciliation, you know, process that we have to maintain, the ongoing maintenance and preserving. We have to make compromises too about proposals. You know, there's other alternatives rather than to just no, it's got to go there. No is no. But what about we have to say no? When does that have to be recognized and accepted that we have a say and a right to say no, it can't go there? In the end of the day, compulsory acquisition, all this and that, you know. So we as people, but as unified people, that we have to work together and make things happen, and we can live in harmony and peacefully.
Thanks, Daniel. We'll just have to get on to Bruce, I think. We've got about 8 minutes to go. Bruce? But no, you can.
I think at the end of the day, I guess it's a process. It's a process towards understanding and learning. If you learn, if your observation, understand and learn, and you understand your land, your dreaming and all those things, then you're in a position to protect and preserve. You will be in the position to protect and preserve. So I'm part of Council of Tribal Elders, so we go out and we link with all the knowledge holders, because the knowledge holders are far and wide. They're spread around because they have links to all these stories, all the dreamings, all the song lines, all that, and that all those stories are held by the old people. So the old people hold that dreaming. The old ladies hold that dreaming. So if you young people want to go and learn, there is a process to go through. The ladies' process is the men's process. Just like you go to school from grade 1 to grade 7 to whatever, to university and so on. So there's different kinds of learning, because there's a whole lot of dreamings of representation in Australia, right across the animals or mammals or birds or fishes or whatever, and they all have a representation linked to stories, and both the sensitive and the basics and all those things, and people need to understand and learn about that. When you learn about that, you'll know. I think the good part of that one is the project, last presentation of keeping the country, keeping the places, knowing your places, knowing your story, knowing all this, getting it on the data. Like you said, there is a sensitive component of that one, and there is a basic component of that one, both for men and ladies. But at the end of the day, the keepers of the law are the old people, the knowledge of the old people of the land and old ladies of the land. They keep the laws because the lady story and the old man's story, and that is where the law. And I always tell them the law is constituted by the dreamings. All of the dreaming that took part in Australia, they are constituted by the dreaming, and nobody hasn't really got into that area to understand. It's very hard to understand by the anthropologists, archaeologists, or to do a scientific research. It's very hard because our people are very selfish. Not selfish, but they want to keep it secret. They're going to keep the secretness of the sacred places. because it's valuable for them, and that's what we encourage our people. If you want to learn, yeah, come along, go and see the old people, listen to the story, and get to know, participate in some of the ritualness of those areas. Participation meaning you got to go to business, you got to travel to those businesses. Well, young ladies got to travel to those places, get a connection. And our story starts from the mouth of the river here, from Fremantle. We got a songline. We start here and finishes up in Duck River. Goes right across to southwest. We've got stories that comes out from in Bibbulmun country, Broome, and of course right across in the middle of our country, right into the Great Bight. So there's no shortage of stories, dreaming stories in this country, but they're sacred components, and they're basic. But the basic things in life is just simple things of understanding and learning. Then that's your first step.
Thank you, Bruce. Well, I just have a few final words. We've seen a bit of cross-section, I suppose, of people from across WA. Heard a few good stories, and I think it's been a great opportunity to share thoughts and ideas. And I think our panel did a pretty good job. If it was an AHA event, we would have had probably a 3-hour panel discussion. So we'd have to get through it in 1 hour, but anyway. Look, on behalf of the panel, we thank the organisers. These guys have come from all over the state, and it's been great to see people come from all over the state, and I'm talking Indigenous, non-Indigenous. So how about a big round of applause? Geri Hayden, Bianca McNeair, Nanda Widi,